In the long story of our world, great empires rise like mountains. They seem permanent, immovable features of the landscape, destined to stand for all time. The Roman Empire was one such creation. For centuries, its influence stretched across continents, a remarkable feat of engineering, law, and military might. Its roads, like the veins of a great organism, connected a vast and diverse body of people. Its aqueducts carried the lifeblood of water to thriving cities. But, like all great natural structures, even mountains eventually erode. The forces of time, of change, and of internal pressure can wear down the mightiest of peaks, and so it was with Rome. The story of its slow, inexorable decline is not just a tale from history, it is a pattern, a cycle we see repeated in the natural world and perhaps in the human world today. Observing the world today, one cannot help but see echoes of this ancient giant in another, more modern power, the United States of America. Like Rome, America grew from a small republic into a global superpower, its influence shaping the economies, cultures and politics of nations far from its shores. Its technological achievements, from landing on the moon to creating the internet, are the modern equivalent of Roman roads and aqueducts, connecting the world in ways previously unimaginable. The American dream, a powerful idea of opportunity and progress, drew people from every corner of the globe, much like Rome attracted citizens to its vibrant, sprawling heart. This immense strength, this global reach, makes the comparison all the more compelling, and the questions about its future all the more urgent. The parallels are striking, not just in their achievements, but in the challenges they face. The story of any dominant species or civilization is one of adaptation. When the environment changes, one must adapt or face decline. Rome, for all its power, eventually failed to adapt to a new set of circumstances. Its immense size became a weakness, its wealth created deep divisions, and its borders faced pressures they could no longer contain. Watching America today, we see similar challenges emerging. The very systems that propelled its rise now show signs of strain. Understanding the fall of Rome is not about predicting a specific doom, but about recognizing patterns and learning from the past. Much like a biologist studies ancient fossils to understand the life that walks the earth today. We are left to wonder, is history a simple repeating loop, or can we, as a species, learn from what came before? The Roman Empire left behind magnificent ruins, silent testaments to its former glory and eventual collapse. They serve as a powerful reminder that nothing is permanent, and that the foundations of even the greatest societies require constant care and attention. As we explore the challenges facing America, we are not looking for a prophecy of collapse, but for an understanding of the forces at play. We are asking if this modern empire can see the reflections of Rome in its own mirror and choose a different path, one of resilience, unity and sustainable strength for the generations yet to come. One of the most significant factors in Rome's decline was the deep division that fractured its society from within. In its later years, the gap between the immensely wealthy and the struggling poor grew into a vast chasm. A small elite, the senatorial class, controlled enormous estates and political power, living in unimaginable luxury. Meanwhile, the majority of the populace, including small farmers and the urban poor, faced hardship, debt, and a loss of political voice. This inequality bred resentment and instability. The social fabric, once strong and unified by a common Roman identity, began to fray as people felt their leaders were no longer serving the common good, but only their own interests. This internal strife made the empire vulnerable, like a great tree with a hollow core, strong on the outside but weak within. This pattern of internal division finds a startling echo in the United States today. We observe a society increasingly polarized, split not just by wealth but by political ideology. The political discourse has become fiercely tribal, with opposing sides often viewing each other not as fellow citizens with different opinions, but as enemies to be defeated. This us versus them mentality erodes the shared sense of purpose that is vital for any nation to thrive. Just as Romans grew distrustful of their institutions, from the Senate to the Praetorian Guard, Many Americans today express a deep-seated mistrust of their government, their media, and even their electoral processes. This erosion of trust is a dangerous current, pulling the nation apart from the inside. In Rome, political instability became the norm. The transfer of power was often violent, with a succession of emperors assassinated or overthrown in military coups. This constant turmoil paralyzed effective governance and made it impossible to address the empire's pressing problems. Long-term planning gave way to short-term survival. In modern America, while the transfer of power remains peaceful, the political system often seems locked in a state of perpetual gridlock. Partisanship can prevent progress on crucial issues, from infrastructure and healthcare to climate change. The focus shifts from solving national problems to winning the next election, creating a cycle of short-term thinking that neglects the long-term health of the nation. The question then arises, can a house so divided against itself truly stand? Rome's experience teaches us that internal unity is not a luxury, but a prerequisite for survival. When citizens lose faith in each other and in their shared institutions, the foundations of the state begin to crumble. The challenges a nation faces, whether economic or external, become nearly impossible to overcome when its people are fighting amongst themselves. America stands at a crossroads, faced with the choice of bridging its internal divides to forge a common path forward, or allowing the fractures to deepen until the structure itself is threatened with collapse. The choice it makes will surely define its future. The Roman Empire, at its height, was an economic powerhouse, but its vast wealth was built on a system that eventually became unsustainable. One of the greatest strains was the immense cost of maintaining its massive military. Legions had to be paid, fed, and equipped to defend thousands of miles of border. This, combined with extravagant government spending and vast public works, led to a constant need for more revenue. To meet these demands, Roman emperors often resorted to devaluing their currency. They would mint coins with less and less precious metal, which led to rampant inflation. As money lost its value, prices soared, and the savings of ordinary people were wiped out, creating widespread economic anxiety and hardship. Today, we can observe similar economic pressures weighing on the United States. The nation carries an immense national debt, driven by significant military expenditures, social programs, and the costs of responding to economic crises. Just as in Rome, there is a fierce debate about taxation and spending, with political divisions often preventing the formation of a sustainable, long-term fiscal plan. While the mechanisms are more complex, the threat of inflation remains a modern concern, capable of eroding the economic security of millions of households. The challenge of balancing the costs of being a global power with the economic well-being of its citizens is a heavy burden, one that America shares with its ancient Roman predecessor. Furthermore, Rome's economy suffered from an over-reliance on conquest and slave labor. As the empire stopped expanding, the flow of new wealth and enslaved people dwindled, and the economic engine began to sputter. The large agricultural estates, or latifundia, worked by slaves, pushed smaller, independent farmers off their land and into the cities, where they often became part of a jobless, restless urban population dependent on state handouts of grain. This created a structural weakness, a society with a shrinking middle class and a growing dependency on a system that was no longer growing itself. It was an economy that consumed more than it produced, a dangerous imbalance for any society. In the modern American economy, we see different but related structural issues. The decline of manufacturing jobs and the shift towards a service and information-based economy have created significant disruption. While some have thrived, many have been left behind, facing wage stagnation and job insecurity, creating a modern parallel to Rome's displaced farmers. This has contributed to a growing sense of economic inequality, where the rewards of economic growth are not shared broadly across the population. Just as Rome struggled with its reliance on an unsustainable labor system, America now grapples with ensuring its economic model provides opportunity and stability for all its citizens, not just a select few, in a rapidly changing global landscape. The final element in Rome's decline was the relentless pressure it faced from outside its borders. For centuries, the empire successfully defended its frontiers against various groups it collectively called barbarians. However, in its later years, these external threats grew more organized, more persistent, and more numerous. Waves of migratory peoples, such as the Goths and Vandals, were pushed towards Roman territory by forces like climate change and conflict further east. The overstretched and expensive Roman military found it increasingly difficult to defend such a vast perimeter. Borders that were once secure became porous, and the empire was forced into a state of constant draining defensive warfare that depleted its resources and its manpower. This dynamic of external challenges testing a great power is a timeless one. For the United States, the threats are not invading tribes, but a more complex web of modern global challenges. These include the rise of rival powers like China, which compete with America economically, technologically, and militarily on a global stage. There is also the persistent and decentralized threat of international terrorism, which requires a different kind of vigilance and defense than a traditional army. Furthermore, global issues like pandemics and climate change respect no borders and can inflict immense damage on a nation's health, economy, and stability. These modern pressures, much like the barbarian migrations for Rome, test America's strength, resources, and ability to adapt. Rome's response to these pressures was often inconsistent. At times, it tried to assimilate new groups, incorporating them into the army and society. At other times, it met them with brutal force. Ultimately, its inability to manage these external relationships and control its borders contributed significantly to the fragmentation of its western territories. The United States faces a similar strategic dilemma. How does it engage with a rising China? How does it combat global threats that require international cooperation, while also navigating domestic pressures for isolationism? The choices it makes on the world stage, whether to build alliances or walls, to lead through cooperation or confrontation, will profoundly shape its security and its role in the 21st century. And so, we are left with a powerful sense of perspective. The story of Rome is not a prophecy for America, but a cautionary tale written in the grand language of history. It teaches us that greatness is not a permanent state, but a condition that requires constant renewal. It shows that the most formidable threats often grow silently from within, from division, economic imbalance, and a failure to adapt. But the human story is also one of resilience and learning. Unlike the Romans, we have their history to study. We can see the patterns, understand the warnings, and perhaps with wisdom and a shared sense of purpose, navigate the challenges of our time. The future is not yet written, and the path America chooses remains its own to forge.